A warm welcome to the Metropolitan Planning Council's first virtual annual event. Instead of gathering in a 1,000-person hall, here we are at our screens. Each day's news brings more heartache and outrage. Yet I feel the energy of our community mobilizing to fight for transformative change. Is MPC's annual event today about mourning or about celebrating? Well, both. Today is about coming together to build a better, bolder, more equitable future for everyone. My name's Mary Sue Barrett, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve as president of the Metropolitan Planning Council. Founded amidst another unprecedented crisis, Chicago's recovery from the Great Depression more than 85 years ago, MPC has always been an independent change maker with a bold agenda. More than anywhere in America, in metropolitan Chicago, the zip code in which you are born determines your opportunity for success. Everyone here has that map etched on your brain. You know that map of Chicago's South and West Side neighborhoods, of Cook County's southern suburbs, of portions of Waukegan, Aurora, and Joliet. Tragically, it doesn't matter if the map is showing gun violence or education gaps for children of color, neighborhoods with the longest commute, multi-generational poverty, communities that repeatedly flood, and COVID deaths. It's the same map. Hundreds of us gather today to process the pain of our systemic failures and to raise our collective voice for action. In 2017, the Metropolitan Planning Council and Urban Institute released our cost of segregation findings. For the first time, it quantified the price we all pay in lost income, lost lives, and lost potential. If the Chicago region had just had an average amount of segregation instead of being one of the most segregated in America, a Black individual would make almost $3,000 more each year. And our region would have $8 billion more in economic activity each year. Inequitable policies and investments got us here. But because of this expansive network, all of you, including MPC's talented staff and committed board led by our chair, Ellen Carnahan, I don't feel skeptical. I don't feel overwhelmed. As we listen and learn together over the next 40 minutes, I ask you, will this finally be our moment to redirect public and private resources to rewrite our region's narrative? We invite you to say yes, to join MPC in forging a blueprint to build back better. MPC is deeply grateful for the support of our generous sponsors. As you signed on to the link today, you saw the logos and names of our presenting sponsor, PNC Bank, and dozens more who helped us surpass our goal of raising $1 million. You make it possible to change perceptions, change conversations, and change the status quo. Please donate online to support our mission. All gifts strengthen the impact of our work to build a better, bolder, more equitable future for everyone. So today we selected the boldest voice we knew to receive MPC's 2020 Champion Fighter Award. John Rogers, co-CEO of Ariel Investments, one of America's largest minority-owned investment firms, is exactly the right messenger to inspire an equitable recovery. I'm excited to surprise John with some video tributes from special people in his life. And I can't wait to hear him interviewed by one of the smartest media executives, Melody Span Cooper, chairman of Midway Broadcasting Corporation. To roll out our red carpet now for them is PNC's regional president for Illinois and one of my advisors, Scott Swanson. Scott, it's been more than a dozen years that PNC has been the presenting sponsor of MPC's big event here. Your team's commitment to early childhood education, your partnership with MPC, as we preserve affordability in communities like East Garfield Park. These are down payments on the change we need. Our heartfelt thanks. Scott?
Well, thank you, Mary Sue. I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us today. On behalf of my fellow PNC colleagues, we are proud once again to be the presenting sponsor of today's event. You know, over the past 15 years, we've partnered with MPC in its mission to be a change maker, to work toward a better, bolder, more equitable future for everyone in the Chicago region. I would like to thank Mary Sue and her team for their tireless efforts in bringing this program together for all of us today. You know, as a business leader, I recognize the role we play in making a difference, which is why it's an honor to help introduce MPC's Champion Fighter Award. Each year, MPC recognizes that extraordinary individual who exemplifies leadership, civic commitment, and philanthropy. I can't think of anyone more deserving of this award than John Rogers, founder, chairman, co-CEO, and chief investment officer of Ariel Investments. While his professional accomplishments were realized through leadership, vision, and courage, it is those efforts throughout our communities and nation for which I'm most excited to share. Now, John is outspoken about corporate America's shortcomings when it comes to racial diversity, regularly appearing in national media outlets on the topic. He said that Black people are locked out of sections of the economy, like financial services and technology, and that a diverse talent pipeline is meaningless if there aren't opportunities at high levels within companies for people of color. John has personally mentored young people throughout their careers, and many of Chicago's brightest financial professionals owe their starts to him. You know, an example is Ariel Investments co-CEO, Melody Hobson, who we first met when she was just on the cusp of attending Princeton as an undergrad. He has helped nurture her path with the company for over 30 years as she's built her own vaunted reputation. You know, when people describe John, they talk about a man of values, a good man, honest, straight talker, a man of action. And so today, I am thrilled to honor John with MPC's 2020 Champion Fighter Award. Today, John joins the ranks of champion fighters and civic giants like Pat Ryan, John Rowe, Lester Crown, Miles White, John Canning, and Andy McKenna. Congratulations, John. I'm now pleased to introduce Melody Span Cooper, chairman of Midway Broadcasting Corporation and a friend of John's, who will lead this conversation, which I'm sure will be enlightening. Congratulations again, John, and take it away, Melody.
Thank you, Scott, and to the PNC Bank family here in Illinois for your support of today's program. Here it is, John, your beautiful award. You deserve it. It's the Champion Fighter Award on behalf of the Metropolitan Planning Council, and it's so well deserved. It is so well deserved that there are a lot of people who couldn't be here today who sent nice messages to you. John doesn't like surprises, but we got one for you.
John Rogers is a fantastic guy, an exceptional human being, somebody who's very loyal to all of what he believes in, including his friends.
When you're with John Rogers, he is exactly who he presents himself to be. So he is an incredibly authentic human being.
John is one of the good guys. That's how I would describe him.
And he's just a good friend of mine, a good friend of the community, and a good friend of organizations like MPC.
My dad is an eccentric combination of ambitious business and philanthropic leader, mixed with the incredible ability, I think, not to take himself too seriously. He has cookie dough for breakfast, he goes to McDonald's almost every day, and he's incredibly competitive in Scrabble.
I know I'm really biased because John's been my best friend and hero and role model since I was about 12 or 13 years old, and none of us are getting any younger now, so that's a more than 40-year relationship. It's pretty remarkable. But you know, besides my two parents, John has had the biggest influence on my life of anyone in the world.
Committed to his hometown of Chicago like no other.
Like so many of us, Chicago shaped John.
His heart has always been in Chicago. John just made a big imprint on this community.
Our family has a long history of being a part of the Chicago community. And he often talks about when he was growing up, how lucky he was to be exposed to African-American leaders who were successful pioneers when he was young.
My joke is John is so local. He's a local yokel. He just really is. He's Chicago through and through. He's most comfortable at home.
John's commitment to his friends, to the other organizations he's connected with, his commitment to his city.
He's the kind of person that when he speaks, you should really listen carefully.
You know, he is a man of conviction.
He learned this from his father, that he's a man of his word. And if he makes a commitment, he's gonna do everything he can to live up to that commitment. And whether it's convenient, whether it's not convenient, whether it's difficult, whether it's, you know, politically cost him something, it doesn't matter. If he makes a commitment, he's gonna try and live up to that.
I don't know anyone in the community who gives more to the community and expects less than John does.
And I think people are listening to John more intently than they have forever. The truth is, he has been fighting every single day for these things for a couple decades.
What you see is what you get. There aren't hidden agendas with John Rogers.
A man of great character. I think that's important to know, that strong character, great integrity.
He's very competitive.
John Rogers will let everybody know that he actually beat Michael Jordan at a basketball game.
He's incredibly loyal, and he's one of the fiercest competitors I've ever met.
He's insightful. He's driven. He's so focused. And I think of him as a major advocate. He advocates.
He is a very honest. You can trust anything with John.
He's generous,
He's a straight-thinking, straight-talking man.
very conscientious, and incredibly determined.
John is a gem.
That's powerful. How cool is that to see your friends salute you like that?
Well, I really appreciate it. It was really a nice surprise.
Yeah, nice surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah, I love seeing, of course, everybody, but my daughter was especially special.
Yeah, I bet. Victoria, I bet. So John and I actually met 25 years ago. I love to tell this story. You and I have never talked about this, but most people would think that a man of your stature, I would only meet you downtown at some business event or maybe somewhere where there's business being conducted, right? I actually met John at Rainbow Push. It's where John spends a lot of his time, and people don't realize that, but the people that's there. And I'll never forget one time John asking you, how does John Rogers end up at Rainbow Push every Saturday, right? And not just standing by, but engaged. And you told me about a story about your mom and dad and how they lived different lives once they divorced, and that you spent time in different homes. Can you share that with the audience? Because I want this audience today not only to understand what makes you tick, but who you really are.
Well, thank you. And really honored to be here, honored by the award. I really appreciate it. When you talk about the early years, my parents got divorced when I was 3. My mom ended up in a home in Hyde Park at 50th and Greenwood, one block from where President Obama's home is. And Valerie Jarrett grew up on that same street. She was a wonderful Hyde Park Kenwood home. My dad moved to a studio apartment in Prairie Shores, what's now called Bronzeville. So every week I went back and forth from this big house in Hyde Park to the small one-room apartment. And I learned to live in 2 different communities.
Yeah.
Each week it was a totally different experience. My father was very strict, had all these rules. My mom was much more lenient. My mom had the housekeeper, my dad didn't. And then my mom was a staunch Republican and my dad was a Democrat. So it was just interesting growing up that way.
Yeah.
But they both faced the enormous amount of discrimination as they were building their careers because, my mom graduated from the University of Chicago Law School in 1946 and my dad in 1948.
Yeah.
He'd been a Tuskegee Airman. And so I watched the challenges that they faced being African-American entrepreneurs and how hard they worked to really get fair economic treatment.
Yeah. So your mom is a pioneer to so many women, especially African-American women. She was the first Black woman to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School and just had an extraordinary career. So you watched very strong women. And her family came from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And as you know, this year was the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa riots, right? And I think about what's happening now, right? Connect that for us and share a little bit about your insights on the Tulsa riots and what that meant at that time, Black folks building a town and having businesses and how it works into today's climate.
Well, I would say that the key thing for me is I get into my 60s is I appreciate my parents more than ever. And my mom was especially proud of her grandfather, J.B. Stratford, who built this extraordinary hotel in the Greenwood section of Tulsa. And as you know, it was a place where an enormous amount of wealth was created for African Americans, dynamic businesses, restaurants, and all types of sort of entrepreneurial endeavors was going on in Tulsa because at that time, Tulsa was one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Yeah. They were finding oil everywhere and the oil rigs were every place. But the tragedy was that there was a race riot, a race massacre, and it was all burned down, and over 300 people were killed. And what it became clear to me was my great-grandfather was a real leader in the community. He not only had built this great hotel that would be worth a lot of money today if it is still in existence, but he was someone who spoke up for social justice and economic justice back in Tulsa, fought for fairness. And so I think I've started to realize that some of my advocacy comes directly from the leadership of my great-grandfather. And then his son, my mom's dad, used his legal skills to stop my great-grandfather from being extradited back to Tulsa once he escaped Tulsa after the race riots. You know, he had gotten away, and they wanted him to come back because since he was a leader in the community, they wanted to hold him accountable for that horrible massacre, which of course is entirely unfair, and there was a risk that he would be lynched in that time. So my mom often says that she was inspired to be a lawyer because she saw her father save her grandfather's life by stopping them from extraditing him back to Tulsa.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we moved from Tulsa to Minnesota, George Floyd this year, which is just, I mean, it's been an amazing time, something we haven't experienced, I don't think, in our lifetime, right? And the outcry, right? And this movement, Black Lives Matter, and just America having hopefully an honest conversation about race in this country, right? Is this a moment or a movement, John?
I think this is it's a transformative time in our country's history. And, you know, Melody Hobson and I have been having many, many conversations with business leaders throughout the country. Yeah. And people seem very serious this time. There's an understanding that even though we got the right to vote and we can live in most communities in this country and there's more and more fairness than there was before, economic justice is still not there. And the wealth gap in this country has gotten larger and larger over the last 40 years. And I think people see it now and realize the challenges and realize the wealth gap and economic gap is directly tied to the challenges that we face of our poor educations, poor schooling, poor housing. All of the challenges that we as Black people face in this country is tied to the fact that we haven't been able to create multi-generational wealth, and we haven't been able to have the types of jobs that really give us the kind of fair income that we deserve.
Yeah, I figured that a lot of CEOs were calling you right now. Just, you know, what should we do? Because I do think people honestly want to get it right? And what should we do? But what I'm hoping does not happen, and I want to get your feedback on this, is that we don't do a lot of talking and less action. What would be your advice of things that leaders can do right away to make a change?
Well, as you know, Melody, we have a conference every year called the Black Corporate Directors Conference, where we bring Black board members of major companies together with Latino directors. Charles Tribbett from Russell Reynolds was our founding partner in that effort, and Deloitte's a partner now. And we bring together 200 African-American directors every year. And one of the key things that we do at that conference is, one, we want to help teach all of us how to be leaders in the boardroom and how to be comfortable speaking out for fairness and economic justice once we're in the boardroom. We think that's critically important. But to be effective, we thought we should have some talking points. And we came up with what we call the 3 Ps. One is what corporations are doing today. Philanthropy. We think that's important to have philanthropic dollars going to civil rights organizations, historically Black colleges, not just to the sort of more traditional places that money goes. So P, number one, and we think corporations are doing a better and better job at philanthropy. The second P is people, making sure that you have executives and leadership roles on the management committees, not just in the lower levels, and that you have a robust program to be able to make sure that people have a pipeline of talent that's moving up. And you can point to people in the highest levels of the organizations and hold companies accountable for having senior people of color in leadership roles. So the second P is very, very important. The other part of that second P is we also want corporations to hold all of their providers accountable for having diverse teams on their relationship. So if you hire a law firm or accounting firm or an advertising agency or an investment bank, make sure there are minority and African-American leaders on the team that services your company. So that's the second P. And the third P is purchasing. We've tried to make sure, and following what Harold Washington did here in Chicago and Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta, to make sure corporations are working with black businesses and brown businesses in everything they do and keeping track of that spending by category. So it's just not the supply chain, which is important, but it's, again, everything. It's like what the University of Chicago's done and Exelon's done and McDonald's has done and many companies are starting to do, is use this term business diversity instead of supplier diversity. Because
What's the difference?
it really reminds people that the economy has become more of a professional services, financial services, and technology-based economy. And so as important it is for us to get construction contracts and catering contracts,
Yeah.
the wealth is being created in another part of our economy. And if you look at some of our great companies in town, Aon Corporation that Pat Ryan founded, if you look at so many of the technology, the Ken Griffin's great business at Citadel, John Canning's private equity business, that's where the wealth is. That's where the leadership is. And so if black and brown people can only do the catering, the construction, and white men get to do get the opportunities where the wealth's created, I call that kind of a modern day Jim Crow. And so that's why it's so important that third P, that we get corporations to, and anchor institutions, the universities, hospitals, museums, to spend money with African Americans in everything they do, and in particular in the areas where they have the highest profit margins and growth opportunities.
I love that. John, so both from Chicago, we love Chicago. You mentioned some very powerful business people in your last answer, right? And we know what's going on with our city right now. It's heartbreaking for me. I can imagine for you. Share with us your thoughts about this time in Chicago. I listened to you talk about Harold Washington. It's my belief that the last time that there was any real growth for African Americans, it was during the Harold Washington administration. That was over 30 years ago, right? And that had a lot to do with the percentage of contracts that were being, garnered by African American business people who employ other African Americans, most likely, right? So we get to this point, we haven't been able to move that needle as effectively as we should, right? And then we see what's happening right now. What are your thoughts about it, about right now in Chicago?
I think one of the things we have to understand is where you started. Actually, things have gotten worse. There's all kinds of data that's so important for people to understand. Kerwin Charles, who's the dean of Yale's Business School, shows and talks about the fact that relative to white Americans, we're worse off than our grandparents were from a wealth standpoint.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just amazing. From 1992 to 2016, the Federal Reserve of St. Louis has data that shows that African Americans, college-educated African Americans, saw their wealth decline 10%, while college-educated whites saw their wealth increase 96% over a roughly 25-year period.
Wow.
So we need to make sure that people understand that we're much worse off, because people are not going to be motivated to make change and give us a fair opportunity if they don't realize how far behind we are and how we're getting further and further behind every day.
Yeah.
The other point that I constantly make is, if you look at Crane's list of the top 350 some odd companies, privately held companies, I think roughly that only 4 African American companies make the list out of 350.
Ariel's one of them, right?
Well, yeah, we're 350, we're 351, I think,
All right,
352.
that's all right. We'll
so
take it.
Yeah, we're right there, just barely made the
Right,
list.
that's all right.
But only 4 companies. So we're basically now rounding errors in the Chicagoland community. And that's why it's so important that we start to open up doors. Because as you suggested, in the earlier years, 40 years ago, when you had Johnson Publishing with over 500 employees and Johnson Products over 500 employees, employing each other, doing great things in the community, starting big banks like George Johnson did with Independence Bank, starting Soul Train.
Yeah. We had 4 or 5 African-American owned banks in Chicago.
Exactly.
I don't think we have one now. We've got an African-owned bank.
Yes.
But I don't know that we have an African-American-owned bank.
And we miss those leaders. They would have been at the top. They would have been in the leadership roles of top companies in Chicago. We had a headquarters of Johnson Publishing on Michigan Avenue. We had great factories, Soft Sheen and again, Johnson Products, et cetera, where hundreds of people worked. So I think it's understanding that things need to, this situation of George Floyd, I think, shines a light on the economic injustice in this country.
Yeah.
And as Dr. King always used to say, progressive white Americans deplore prejudice, but accept or ignore economic injustice. And I think that's something we have to continue to remind people.
John, the Metropolitan Planning Council, which is hosting this event, has been around for 85 years, and they're important to Chicago. They remind us and they keep us engaged around the importance of neighborhoods and community. How can the council become more engaged during this pivotal time? What actions do you want them to take in their Build Back Better campaign? What is your advice based on where Chicago is now?
Well, I think it's great when important leadership in the city and important leadership organizations like this one stay on message about the importance of economic justice. And, to think about the 2 Ps that we've talked about around people and purchasing, and reminding the leaders of these giant companies and these giant anchor institutions that they have a responsibility to be inclusive. If you think about it, we have museums and hospitals and universities that have not followed the lead of the University of Chicago and the over 90 businesses that they're working with. And so I'm going to always keep coming back to what Daniel Burnham always talked about. If you don't have a strong economy, you're not going to have all the great things that you need in the city. Everything starts with having strong business leadership and strong business success. And we want to have people fighting to get African Americans to have a chance to fully participate in economic opportunity in the city. Then everything else will flow from there.
Let's talk a little bit about our city and how it's laid out and segregation in our city. I always thought segregation, surprisingly, worked in terms of the politics of Black Chicago because it's such a wide swath of Black communities. You think about Chicago, John, you started 22nd and all the way into the suburbs to 280th Street is Black people. Chicago's got a large Black community, right? And the Metropolitan Planning Council did a cost analysis on what segregation is and what it means to Black Chicago. And they found that incomes for African Americans would rise by almost $3,000 a year if the region segregation was reduced. Is segregation in Chicago the reason why there is such a disparity in wealth in our community, do you think?
Oh, I think segregation is at the heart of a lot of the problems that we face in our communities. It really is true. My father always bought real estate when he was coming along, building his career, and he only bought it on the South Side. He never created any multi-generational wealth because the value of the real estate never went up. Versus if he was buying it in the North Shore or the western suburbs, he would have created a lot of wealth with his ingenuity and his saving patterns and his ability to invest. But you couldn't create real wealth there. And as you know, business opportunities come, people work, as Reverend Jackson often says, with people they know and they like and are familiar with. People give opportunities to people they've grown up with, that they went to the same schools, went to the same country clubs. And so the fact that we are in a segregated society, we don't have relationships with CFOs and general counsels and CEOs. We don't have role models as much in our community of people doing business. And so it's so important that we figure out a way to move Chicago past this segregation past and create equal opportunities for everyone, and realizing business comes from trust that's built through social relationships.
As seen in the Metropolitan Planning Council study, you guided the University of Chicago towards racial inclusion. You do that wherever you go, but University of Chicago being so important to you, I saw you do it at ComEd. Those are 2 examples where they work very hard to get inclusion right? What should businesses do? Is it aspirational? Is there a number they should target? How can businesses be intentional on increasing opportunity for African Americans?
I always think it's important to have what I always call a Jackie Robinson moment.
Okay.
Make sure you have a senior executive. Make sure you have, in everything you do, all your spending, you have a breakthrough. Maybe it's a Black law firm, it's a Black accounting firm, maybe it's one of the money managers for your 401k plan. You want to make sure you're making progress. Don't wait to be able to fix everything. But, get it done. And then you need to sometimes it's great when you have a partnership with board members, leadership and management, and people who believe in it. So at the University of Chicago, where we've been able to have great success, Nadia Quarles, who runs the program, is terrific. But we've had Bob Zimmer's support from the very beginning. And when it starts at the top with someone who believes in true diversity and inclusion, it makes all the difference. Now, at Exelon, Bill Bonhaney has done extraordinary work, amazing work. And you guys co-chair President Obama's foundation's
Inclusion Council.
Inclusion
yeah.
Council because of the work that you guys do and
Yeah.
your commitment to that kind of excellence.
Yeah.
So having that kind of dynamic leadership that's supported makes all the difference.
So let's move. We're winding down now, and during the opening monologues of the tapes, they talked about your competitiveness, right? And anybody who knows John knows he loves basketball. It's your favorite sport, right? Why is basketball it for you? What is it? You're very passionate too. Have people ever seen you play?
Yes.
Why is it basketball?
Well, I think partly I was in high school. I was better at it. I got to be Class A, all state, and all area here in Chicago, and so I had some success at it. And then barely made the team at Princeton, which was just one of the most fortunate things in my life.
Yeah.
Because playing for Coach Krill, who was a Hall of Fame basketball coach, changed my life. He's the one that drilled into me the importance of teamwork and thinking about your teammates first. And as an only child, it was just a transformative moment.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't made that team, it would have not happened. He also kept me on the team because of my competitiveness. He said when it came to basketball, he said, Johnny, you have no vision. You're legally blind. You have no idea what you're doing. We're going to keep you around because you play so hard.
Wow.
I don't want to cut you. And so ultimately I got to be captain, and the lessons I learned there made me value basketball. And I've tried to use the values I learned there in building Ariel and how I conduct myself in other leadership roles is to ultimately always try to think about your teammates first. And that drives everything.
That's powerful. Is that what helped you beat Michael Jordan at a game of horse?
Well, it was a one-on-one game.
Coach
Brill always said I was a good one-on-one player because he didn't have to pass.
Yeah.
And so my legally blind eyes did not impact my,
That's
my ability to play Michael in a short
Anybody
game.
who knows John has seen this tape, but it's on YouTube. And I told him this morning, I said, John, you're almost at 6 million views. He said, no, it's more like 10 million. It's more like 10 million. And you got to watch him. John used to attend flight. Was it flight school that you used to go to?
Senior flight school that for campers 35 years and older.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan would play any camper.
Yeah.
But no one ever beat him the first 7 years. So when I played him, he was both overconfident, tired, because he played 30 campers that day, I think, or 20.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe it was more like 20 campers.
Right.
And then he, my last shot, when he goes in, you can hear him say, oh, no.
I heard that. I watched it again last night. He said, oh, no, like, this dude is going to beat me, right? I want to talk to you a little bit about The Last Dance. Let's end it here. The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's documentary. I know you watched it, right?
Sure.
And at the end of it, John, you find Michael Jordan very reflective. He's smoking the longest cigar I've ever seen in my life. I know it cost him $1,000. I know it. But he's sitting there, right? And he's looking out over, the ocean or the lake or whatever that beautiful home of his at waterfront is. And he gets up and he kind of walks away. And at that point, as a viewer, I'm wondering one of three things. Is he being reflective and saying, well done? Is he being reflective and says, I should have done something better in some areas? Or is he thinking, act two, what's next, right? When you look back over your life, where are you in your reflection?
I think Melody Hobson and I think the best is yet to come. We're really excited about the future. We have the best team that we've ever had. We want to build something. I started my career at William Blair, working with Ned Janata, and my idea is to build something that can grow from generation to generation and be successful, have an impact here in the community, and show that a diverse group of people of all colors and races and sexes can come together to build something that's all about excellence in performance, in the way that we service clients, and the way that we engage in our community to fight for economic justice and fairness.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our vision and our dream. And
you living it?
We're living it and planning. We got a lot more to go, hopefully.
I bet.
And totally focused on the future.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you do. And I want all those viewing to know that, Ariel is a business, right? And for the past 10 years now, right, John? You've had the #1 mutual fund in the country.
Well,
what's the
to be
product?
fair, our Ariel fund is over 35. Well, it's 1986 the Ariel fund started.
Yeah.
It was 34 years old. But we've been #1 in our category since the last financial crisis, March of 2009,
Right.
in sort of the mid to mid-cap value space.
Yeah.
And we're really proud, though, of that track record. And,
Yeah. $12 billion under management for you guys.
yes, we manage
That's
about
huge.
12 billion with about 100 people.
Yeah.
But again, we are very small, and we want to get to be a much larger company so we can have much more impact and do more. And we're working really, really hard at it.
But we want to thank you. Thank you so much for doing this today. And before we leave, there is another person who'd like to say hi to you and congratulate you on your award.
Well, thank you.
What makes John Rogers a Chicago hometown hero? Well, I'll tell you why John Rogers is a hero to so many. He's an ambitious son of Chicago, and he invests in the city's youth and in social justice causes, so the future looks brighter for everyone. John knocks down the walls that block too many of our residents from securing a better, bolder future. He's put enormous time and effort into creating quality education options in schools like the Ariel Elementary Community Academy, more recreation amenities in neighborhood parks, and more diversity in executive suites. John knows that a seat at the table isn't enough. We need inclusive talent and procurement pipelines. His voice on behalf of the people of Illinois has been everywhere, from City Hall to the state capitol to the Oval Office. John reminds us that it's long past time for talk about racism, when instead progress must be made. On economic advancement for people of color, Illinois must lead the way. I couldn't agree more. What a perfect name for an award honoring John Rogers, champion fighter. Congratulations, John, and thank you to MPC for being a leader in the fight to build back better.
Wow. How cool is that?
Awesome. Nice surprises today.
Governor
Thank you so much.
of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. John, thank you so much. Congratulations on your award. And to the Metropolitan Planning Council, congratulations on this event. I am honored to sit here with my dear friend and do this. It's been one of the greatest interviews that I could do, to spend time with him like this. So thank you. And we'll see you around town.